Welcome to the EOPS Study Skills Workshop Fall 2020. Today we're going to be learning about how to study smarter and not longer. One thing that we've realized while working with students at Monterey Peninsula College is that many students weren't taught how to study and how to prepare for exams, and that results in students putting in lots of time into actually studying but not getting the results and the grade that they want on their exams. Today, we're going to be looking at some research from UC San Diego. They have about 10 years of research about what is the most effective way to study in order to perform the best on your exams and retrieve that information that you've been trying to memorize. So we're going to go over a couple techniques, and I hope you can leave this workshop today with some concrete tools of how to better prepare for your next exam. Let's get started. Okay. So, this was really shocking to me. Research shows that the traditional way of studying is not the most effective. And this was news to me. In college, in high school, I never was taught how to study. I would just reread the chapter and highlight things that I thought were important. I also would look at my math homework or my math test and just look over the equations and try and make sure I understood how to get the answer. But it turns out that that's not the most effective, and actually that was kind of a waste of my time. So we can take out the guesswork here and we can go to the research and figure out what actually works. So what you should do instead is prepare for how you're going to have to take that test. This was huge news to me. So if you're in a history course, for example, and you have an essay question test coming up, don't read the chapter and highlight it. You should be quizzing yourself, maybe with the questions at the end of the chapter, and you should be performing how you're going to be doing it on that test. So you should be writing out essay responses so you can prepare how you might be responding to those on the exam that you have coming up. Another one would be if you have a multiple choice test, say that's in psychology. You should be preparing by testing yourself, by creating tests yourself, or finding the tests maybe in the back of the chapter to be getting ready to how you're going to have to recall that information on the test that you have coming up. Again, verbal, so maybe you're in public speaking and you have a big speech coming up. You don't want to be practicing by writing things out. Practice actually giving that speech. Look in the mirror. That might be helpful for eye contact, things like that, but really getting in the habit of how you're going to have to perform during that upcoming exam, speech, or whatever it is that you have coming up in one of your tests, in one of your classes. That's going to be the most effective way to get ready. So we talked a little bit about preparing for the type of test that you're going to be taking. And there's two specific strategies that UC San Diego covered that are the most effective when we're trying to remember information. So let's get into those. The first one is called retrieval practice. So what is that? This is going to be testing yourself, right? So kind of figuring out what do you know, and maybe what are some areas that you need to work on remembering more or becoming more comfortable with. So giving yourself those practice tests. This is going to be, identifying maybe you don't remember important dates that you need to know for this test, and you can freshen up on those so when the test does come, you're ready for that. Also, putting away the material and recalling it is going to be super, super important. If we actually have to cover it and say, what did we just learn or what did we just read, and have to kind of create a response to that and be able to articulate that, that's going to make a huge difference, because we can figure out, I understood the beginning, but maybe the end I need to touch up on a little bit. Using flashcards is another idea that you can do. For me, I don't like to purchase flashcards, but I make my own. So I will use any sort of lined paper, and I will just cut that up into small flashcards. What I've found to be really helpful is having flashcards, studying them one way, and then flipping them and studying them the other way. So whatever you get on the test, you're going to be ready for. So for an example, maybe you're studying anatomy, and the name of something is on the front, and then the description of what it is on the back. So memorizing it so you know it both ways. So if you see the definition, you'll be able to know what to put in the test. Or if you see, the term that you just memorized, you'll know how to put that definition. So that's one thing that I would really encourage you guys to think about. The other thing is flashcards can go anywhere. When I was in college, I would keep like a little thing of homemade flashcards in my back pocket or in my purse. When I was waiting for the bus, when I was going to bed, do a quick little 10 minutes before bed, just trying to find those extra moments when you think you don't really have time, but actually you can find an extra 5 to 15 minutes a day, and that can make a huge difference in how much you remember. So the other piece of this is making sure that after you cover the material and try and recall it, that you actually check to see what did you get right and what did you maybe need some room for improvement, or what did you get wrong? Because saying, oh, I think I know this, and repeating it, recalling that information, if it's not correct, that's not going to help you on the test. So we really want to make sure that you're recalling it and then checking to see how you did. That's going to be a huge piece of this. And using this over several days and weeks to increase your retention, or basically how much you remember. Okay, so yeah, kind of playing off of that, space practice is the other technique that's going to be so important. This is good news because I hated cramming so much in college. It was so stressful. You just felt like you had this like short window of time and everything had to matter so much if you were going to get a good grade. And the good news is that is not effective. So you do not need to stress about cramming before your test. It's not fun and it doesn't work very well. So we're going to kind of explore what are some other ideas for getting yourself prepared for the test to avoid those cramming sessions and to still get the grade that you want. So this is going to require a little bit of time management on your part, being able to prepare for each subject over multiple days and weeks. It's going to be maybe a shift for some of you because you've been preparing maybe the night before the test, and that's how you've always done it. And creating a new behavior is going to be kind of tough because we're such creatures of habit, right? So we do what we've always done, and that's kind of just our nature. So if you want to try and create a new behavior and do some time management of being able to study a little bit each day, you're going to have to kind of think a little bit differently. One thing I like to share with students is if you want to create a new behavior, you're going to need to maybe give something up. So if you want to create an extra 20 or 30 minutes a day to figure out how to do studying, so you're able to do spaced practice and you're not cramming, you need to kind of think about what are you going to give up on that Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday in order to make that extra 30 minutes. A couple ideas that students have shared with me is giving up 30 minutes of looking at Instagram or Facebook, looking at the internet, watching TV, time with your friends, just little things like that, thinking what would you be willing to give up in your day to make time to create this study habit. The other thing I wanted to say is that it doesn't need to be long. You don't need to do a long 2-4 hour session of studying. If we could even get you to start with 1 hour, spacing that out each day for a subject, that could make a huge difference. It kind of gives your brain a chance to read the material, understand the material. And oftentimes when we have long study sessions, we get so bored. We're like there, but we're not really engaged. We're not really actively learning. And so just doing a short session, one, can make it feel so much more doable. You're like, okay, I can do 1 hour. But if I have a 4-hour study session coming up on a Sunday, I'm like dreading it all day. I'm putting it off. So if we're able to kind of cut those a little bit shorter, maybe we can knock out 45 minutes. Maybe you end up staying an hour or an hour and 15. So just trying to make it a little bit more manageable and trying to figure out what are we willing to give up to create those extra little pockets of time to get extra studying in throughout the week. Consistency is going to be really important. So if you study 3 days in a row and then you don't touch any of that material for 2 weeks, you're not going to be remembering nearly as much as if you were consistently, maybe every other day, looking at it for an hour. So trying to make sure you can create little habits, put a sticky note on your mirror, put a reminder in your phone, trying to just create little ways to remind you that you want to be doing little bursts of studying to help increase your grades on the test. And finally, to cover old and new material. This might be kind of a given, but just thinking about, if you had a test that you did well on or did poorly on, and you have a final coming up, you want to be learning the new material and reviewing that each week, but you also want to touch a little bit on that material you covered earlier in the semester, because if the final is cumulative or covering all of the material that semester, it's easier to stay a little bit connected to that material versus totally ignoring it and having to almost relearn it at the end of the semester. So those are a couple tips for the space practice. Okay, so the goal is to combine both of these practices. The retrieval, right? So we're like learning it, we're covering it, we're testing ourselves. What did we just learn? What is the answer to this question in the back of the chapter? I always thought, why would anyone do the questions in the back of the chapter if they're not required? Like, what a waste of my time. And learning about this research, I realized that is the most effective way. So those are really gems back there, and being able to test yourself is going to be super helpful. And then also just including the space studying. So you're able to have those 1 to 2 hour study bursts, ideally every day, if not every other day, just so you can keep touching that material. It doesn't feel overwhelming, and you're giving yourself a chance to be, just consistently making that connection to be remembering more. Okay, so this is a cool video about how to make practice tests. Like I said, I was never taught how to study, so I've never made a practice test for myself. I thought some of you might be in that same boat. So this video is going to talk to us a little bit about how to make practice tests, so you guys can leave this workshop today knowing exactly what you might be able to do for that test you have coming up. So let's take a look.
Hi guys! Today's video is a collaboration with Ruby Granger, and our videos are about how to make studying fun. And her video is about flashcards, and it'll be linked in the description. As you could probably guess from the title of this video, my video is about how to make practice tests. So to start off, you'll first need to have some questions to answer, obviously. And the easiest way to get these is to find them from another source. So the best way to do this is to check your textbook for any review sections. If you don't have a textbook or it doesn't have any review sections, you'll want to Google your topic plus practice questions to find some questions. And make sure the questions you do find have an answer key so you can check your answers. And if this doesn't work, or if you'd prefer to, you can write your own questions. The way you would do this is pick a fact from your textbook or from your notes, and then figure out how to make it into a question. You don't have to just do Q&A style questions. You can also do, for example, vocabulary matching, filling out a diagram or a chart. You can do a fill-in-the-blank question. So once you've got your questions, it's time to take the test. And the least fun version is to just take the practice test. Type out all of your questions in 12-point Times New Roman or some other really generic font and print them out. Then answer the questions and check your answers. A way to make this just a little bit more interesting is to use a font that you really enjoy. Make sure it's still legible though, and change the colors. One of the best ways to make answering these questions actually fun is to do it with your friends. So you can meet somewhere, for example, the library or someone's house, or you can video chat. And everyone should write their own questions, and then you can all take turns answering and asking the questions. That does still sound quite boring, especially if none of you are very interested in answering questions in the first place. So another way to make it a little more interesting is to appeal to people's competitive spirits. So one of my favorite ways to do this is Kahoot. I am incredibly competitive when it comes to Kahoot. And if you've never heard of it, I'll link it in the description box. Some other games you can play are Jeopardy, or you can just do a competition to see who will answer the most questions correctly. And a great motivator is a prize for winning the competition. To be honest though, the only thing that will actually make studying fun is your attitude and the attitude of the people that you're studying with. If you think it's fun, it'll feel fun. And if you think it's boring, you'll feel bored. So the most important thing to do after the practice test is to note which topics you either don't remember or made a mistake with. That way you know what to focus on when studying later. And practice tests do seem like a lot of effort to make, so why bother making them? It's all a matter of active studying versus passive studying. So active studying is something where you're actively trying to remember the information, whereas passive studying is just looking over the information. For example, rereading your notes or your textbook. So practice tests and flashcards are two of my favorite methods for active studying, and those do also happen to be the topics of my collaboration with Ruby, who will be linked in the...
All right, so that video is super helpful. I hope that was kind of nice to see for you guys. It just gives great examples of, one, how to make practice tests, but also how to make it a little bit fun, right? I really liked how she said, if you think it's boring, it's going to be boring. And if you think it's fun, it's going to be fun. I totally understand studying for science might not be fun, but I think what she's trying to say is it's about your perspective. And if you need to be studying for this anyways, going in with a good attitude of, you know what, I'm going to give this my best. I'm really going to get engaged for this hour. I'm not going to be looking at my phone. I'm not going to have TV in the background. I know you guys are going through really hard times right now with COVID and having to work from home. So maybe it's really tough to find a place to study. And I think that that's, something to be recognized during this time that's extra hard. But if you can find a little pocket of, even studying in a car, going outside, just trying to find that little window of where you might have a little bit of time to yourself and quiet time to really dive in and give it your best shot, that might make a huge difference for you. So I just wanted to make sure we touched on that. So now we've talked about how to make a practice test. So now we are going to practice and get to use that a little bit. So this is going to be an activity because I'm recording this and we're remote right now. If we were in person, I would have you guys break into pairs. But what we're going to do is I'm going to read this paragraph and then I'm going to ask you to pause the video and create your own practice test. This is going to kind of make you think, how do I create a practice test? What would that look like? And then we'll review it together. So read the following paragraph and create a practice test. Hippopotamus are also known as hippos. These animals live in sub-Saharan Africa and are the third largest type of land mammal. Male hippos can average 3,300 pounds. Typically, they live in rivers, lakes, and mangrove swamps. They are known as one of the most dangerous animals in the world as they can be highly aggressive and unpredictable. Okay, so I picked hippos because I thought it was kind of funny, kind of silly, and testing and taking, practice tests are kind of a little bit of a, dry subject. So I put these pictures of the hippos. So the next slide is going to say, create 3 multiple choice practice test questions based off what we read and write them down. So, so we're not going to be able to share with the group, but let's go back. So I want you to look at this paragraph right here and write down 3 possible practice test questions that you could do from this. So please pause the video. And once you've completed those 3 multiple choice practice test questions, please hit play and we'll go into the next part. Okay, so hopefully you guys are back from pausing the video and creating your own practice test questions. These are some that I created myself. So number 1, hippopotamus are also commonly known as, right? And so you can go back to the paragraph and see, it's going to be hippos. Make sure that you understand that part. And then number 2, hippopotamus are the blank largest mammal living on land. So if we think back, that would be the 3rd. So that answer is C. And then the hippopotamus are not aggressive at all. True, false, or didn't say. This is definitely going to be false because we know they are aggressive animals. So this, I hope this just kind of gives you the skill set of, okay, I read something, this is how I can test myself. You can always go back to the paragraph and reread it. But this is something that you guys can be using for every class from here on out. And I hope this will help you remember stuff in the future. And also it might even help you because you might be preparing a question that you actually see on the exam. So how cool would that be? You've already answered the question because you prepared yourself, right? Okay. So one of the big things that I talk to about students is that multiple choice tests are really hard for them. I know that when I was in a class, especially in college, and we had a multiple choice test, I would get like really sweaty. I would just get like kind of nervous because I was like, oh, like I'm not good at these, you know, and knowing that that was not my strength made almost every multiple choice test extra hard because I was like, dang it, like I already know I'm going to get some of these wrong. Just because I'm so nervous and I don't really know how to go about taking them. So I did some digging and I found some tips that we can take away from today about how to get ready and how to tackle that multiple choice test that you have coming up. So there's some strategies I think will really help you guys. So let's take a look at this video and I'm going to pause it after each tip they give because this person made a great video for sure, but they talk so fast. And so I just want to pause it, take a moment, kind of think about what they said, and then we can go into the next one. So I just wanted to give you guys a heads up. So let's get into this.
Grammarly does more than catch errors. With Grammarly, you can find...
Thanks for stopping by. This is 2 Minute Classroom, and today I'm going to give you 7 tips for multiple choice exams. And if you want to further develop your study and test-taking skills, I've linked some books I recommend and a study playlist in the description. Now on to the tips. We'll start with the basic ones and then move on to the more advanced tips, but all of these tips are relevant. Tip number 1 is to read through the instructions carefully. I'm always shocked at how many students jump right into the test without reading the instructions, and maybe you're one of them. There is often valuable information in the instructions about how to take the test and what you are allowed to do, so read it first. After reading the instructions, you can move on to tip number 2.
Okay, so for tip number 1, pretty straightforward, but make sure you're reading the instructions of exactly what they say. You know, sometimes we just jump into that test. We want to start with number 1. So it just almost, you know, I would encourage you to take a deep breath, you know, say, I prepared for this test, I'm ready for this test, and I'm going to do the best I can. And then read the instructions completely. If it's confusing, read them again. You know, those instructions are going to be super important for you, and then get into taking that test.
2, which is to answer the easy questions first. This is a solid tip for nearly every type of test. It provides an overview of the test and gives you several small victories to boost your confidence right at the beginning of the test.
Okay, so for tip number 2, it totally makes sense. You know, go answer the easy questions first. One thing that happened to me on multiple choice tests is that I would get into the test and say the first 2 questions I didn't know the answer to. I would spend like all of this time and energy being like, why don't I know the answer to that? Like I should have known that, like I studied, and kind of get in this like whole headspace of like, I should have known the answer, or what could it be? And my confidence for being able to do well on the test is like plummeting, just crashing, because I feel like, why did I, you know, I didn't know the first 2 questions. How am I going to do the rest of this test? And I think that tip really makes sense. So what I would encourage you to do is cover each question so you can't start to like look down the entire test, and just do them one at a time. And if you don't know how to do that question or that, you know, equation or answer that right away, I would just move on. Don't get emotionally invested in it. Okay, next one. And hopefully at the end of the test, you'll have at least 4 or 5 questions that you've already answered correctly, that you feel confident, you feel really sure about. And that will give you a boost of confidence. Like, I can do this. I already answered 5 for sure, right? And that can go lead you into feeling better and performing better to go back, answer the medium hard ones then, and then finally save those very hard last ones for the final wrap up. So I think that would be definitely a tip to remember.
Tip number 3 is to answer the question in your mind before reading the answer options. Use a piece of paper or your hand to cover the answer options. You may have to get a little more creative if it's a digital test. Then, with the answers covered, read the question and formulate your best idea of the answer in your mind before looking at the answers. So why do this rather than just reading the options? Because you won't get confused by the answer choices and thinking 2 or 3 of the options sound like good answers. If one of the options is similar to the answer you came to in your head, then you can answer faster and with more confidence.
This is a great tip because this really is something that I think we could all benefit from. It reminds me of being like in a math class and having a math final, and I would look at the answer and it's either 0.3, 0.003, 0. All of them are so similar. And I'd be like, I don't know. I know it has 3 in it. But if you don't even look at the answers and you just do the equation yourself and you get that answer, you'll be able to pair it to what the answer is. Again, if it's, remembering something about psychology or history or business, read that question, pull the answer out of your memory. This is the answer. And then you'll be able to pair it confidently. But if you're looking at the answers, you might say, well, it could be this one, but it most likely is this one. And it just gets a little bit more confusing. So I think, cover those options and really confidently answer if you can, and then pair it to that one.
Try it out. Tip number 4 is to read every answer option. Similar to the instructions, many students skip this step on at least a few questions, often to their demise. Because most multiple choice test questions want you to find the most correct answer, there may be multiple correct answers. So if you stop at the first one, you may not see the most correct one. Even if you think you've found the answer, read them all.
That's something that I definitely have been guilty of, where I am going through the answers. I'm like, it's B. I know for sure it's B, like 100%. And then I get the test back and it's like, yes, it was B, but it was also C. And so because it was B and C, the answer is D. You know what I mean? Where it's like, yes, you're not wrong in knowing that B is correct, but there could be a more right answer. And so that really goes to reading all the answers, thinking about it thoroughly, and then making sure you're picking the most correct answer.
Number 5 is to use the process of elimination. When you come to a question that you don't know the answer to, you can increase your odds by eliminating answers you know to be incorrect. Physically cross them out if you can. If you can narrow it down to 2 or 3 answers, you'll increase your odds for guessing correctly from the remaining answer choices. I'll do a separate video about guessing strategies for multiple choice tests and link it below because it's a separate video all by itself. And if you're finding these tips valuable, consider subscribing because you'll likely find.
Okay, so tip number 5, crossing out things that is incorrect, especially if you're a visual learner, being able to cross that out. I know we're remote right now, so maybe you can even write down A, B, C, D on a piece of paper and cross out B and D on the paper. So you're able to kind of see that visually. What do you have left? Another tip that he didn't speak about that I just wanted to touch on that I found kind of through my education is sometimes one of the questions in the question itself, it will have the answer to another question. So for example, if it's, something about the dates, it'll say in 1865, this happened, talking about some sort of a scenario. And then later on in the test, it says, in what year did this happen? And you can go back to question number 4 and say, it says 1865 right here. So really trying to pull whatever you can from what you're given already and seeing if any answers are hidden in some of the other questions. So that can be really helpful.
A lot more value from my future content. Tip number 6 is specifically for all of the above type questions. You don't actually have to know if all of the above answers are correct. You just need to know if more than one are correct. For example, if the question has 5 possible answers, the last of which is all of the above, and you know the first and third answers are correct, but are uncertain about the other 2, you can confidently answer all of the above. Tip number 7 is to answer every question. I was amazed as a teacher to see students not answer multiple choice questions. I understand that you may not know the answer, but you can certainly write or circle a random answer. And there can also be a lot of strategy to guessing, which I'll make a separate video on. The only time you don't want to guess is when you lose points for wrong answers. In my experience, the vast majority of tests award you 0 points for a wrong answer, but on certain tests, you'll lose points for answering incorrectly, so make sure you know the test before you guess. Now, watch this video on.
Okay, so those are some strategies for taking a multiple choice test. I found them to be really helpful, so I hope you guys got something from that as well. Again, that video talks really quickly, so it's a little bit tough to be, keeping up with it. But I think just understanding that there are strategies to be used during that multiple choice test that actually can help you. Also pairing that with the retrieval practice and successive learning, spaced out practice, those are going to be some great tools to help improve your grades on your exams. Okay, so now we're going to get into some tutoring that's going to be available at MPC, especially because we're online right now. So I'm going to go ahead and show you guys a couple different things that we can get into that will hopefully help you find some tutoring resources that maybe you didn't know were available, especially because we're remote right now. So let's go ahead and log in. You're going to want to log into your Lobo apps, and you're going to want to go to Canvas. Okay. So when you get to Canvas, you can see the Student Services Hub right here. And so go ahead and click on that. And there's going to be all of the tutoring resources that we have available. Especially these are all available online right now. So I'm just going to go through and show you guys these. So here is the Reading and Writing Center. So I want you to click on that. And so let's click on the services. So this is a cool video that they have, just kind of welcoming students, talking about all the confusing things that happen in English classes. I know a lot of students struggle with English, especially online. And so to make an appointment, you can click on appointments. And there's going to be 2 different types of tutoring available. So there's going to be either synchronous tutoring, which is kind of a fancy word just for a live meeting with a tutor. So one example is if you wanted to meet with a tutor and talk about what do you want to write your paper on, you don't understand what the prompt says. For example, they say, write a research paper on this. And you're like, I literally have no idea what that means. You would want to do a synchronous tutoring session with a tutor. So you could say, hey, I don't understand this. Make sure to bring your prompt so you guys can have that to discuss together. There's also asynchronous tutoring available. So what does that mean? That means where you can have a draft of a paper for any class that has writing in it, and you can drop that off and a tutor will revise that, which means makes corrections and then send it back to you. They say within 24 hours, I would encourage you to do 48 hours so you can just make sure to get that back and have time to make those corrections. But having someone look at the paper before you submit it can really make a huge difference in being able to take that paper from a C to a B or a B to an A, run on sentences. If you're having issues with citations and being able to cite your research, this is such an amazing resource. So I really hope that you guys end up using this. And then let's get back into here. So we're going to go back home. And then here's the Math Learning Center. Okay, so if you're taking a math class and you want some support with that, and then here we have the the online tutoring schedule. So this is going to be something that's really helpful. So, it says, welcome to the Math Learning Center. It'll be highlighted. The day and the time that we're currently in will be green. So right now it's going to be Wednesday 2 to 3. So we can see that Doug Carpenter is going to be available, and there's a Zoom link to get into that tutoring session, or Jussie as well. So that's going to be a great way to figure out, who's available. And I did want to say a tutor may have a queue waiting for them. That means that maybe someone's ahead of you waiting to be seen by that tutor. If you don't want to wait, you can close that Zoom window and open it with another one. So I just wanted to kind of touch on that. Say you get in here and you're trying to get some support from Doug, but he has someone waiting, you could close that window and come back and get some support from Jussie. So I just wanted to make sure you guys knew that. And then if we scroll down, there's some information about tutors. So kind of who these people are and what their specialty is. So you can know a little bit more about them. And it says most tutors can assist with every math class below Math 20A level. So that's just such a great thing to know. Don't be suffering alone in your math class. Get that tutoring support. I really encourage you to even consider, trying to come to tutoring maybe twice a week. The more you can get connected and get support from tutoring to feel like you're back on track and being able to work with them to see where you're missing some sort of understanding, the better your grade's going to be. And just making sure whenever you're falling behind in a class, we really encourage you to reach out to your instructors, send them an email. This is my name. This is my student ID. I'm in your class, Math 16, section number, whatever it is. I'm really struggling with chapter 6. I don't understand this part of it. Can I come to your office hours? Can I schedule an appointment with you to talk about this? I think staying connected during this time of being remote is really important. And the more specific you can be with your instructors about what you're struggling with, the better they can help you. We've heard from some instructors that students are saying they're just generally confused. And because we've been in school for almost 8 weeks, I think instructors don't know where to kind of help you and what pieces to follow up on. So just making sure you're staying in communication with them and specifying what is confusing and trying to see if you can get that extra support to stay on track. So the other tutoring resource I wanted to show you is the STEM cell. So this is going to be, they have a video here if you want to look at that. They have tutoring schedule right here. And so this is going to be for science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And so they are going to have the same kind of a deal where you can put your cursor over, you can click on the instructor's name, and that's going to be where they're able to get the Zoom link. So below, you'll see the tutors and instructors for the subjects. So, if you're in geology, you want to make sure that you're going to find someone who's able to help you with geology. So here is the subjects up on top, and then this is the tutor and if they help with that subject. So here you can see that we're doing a lot of the calculus math and upper division math. So a lot of people can help with that. Chemistry, physics, engineering, biology, computer science, geology, oceanography, anatomy, and astronomy. So I just wanted to make sure that you guys know that this is going to be, available to you. You can just come up here and go ahead, join a live drop-in tutoring session. And this is just going to be something that, again, the more you use it, it's going to be really, really helpful to getting back on track with your classes. And if you have questions or group study requests, please email Paige. And so this is going to be, say you want to see if you could get a group going for anatomy 1 and 2 to have a study group weekly. Maybe you guys meet up for a couple hours on Thursday and talk about what you understand, what's confusing. So this is a huge resource to being able to get that going. So I just wanted to make sure you guys knew about that. The final piece I wanted to show you today was online tutoring. So this is called NetTutor, and I just wanted to clarify that this is not available for every subject that we have listed here. So you need to click on the subject and see if anyone is available to help you. So I just wanted to make sure we clarified it's not available for every subject, but there are some subjects that we do have help with. So for example, child growth and development. Let's click on that. And so there's a live tutor option, or you can schedule an appointment. So let's see if this is available. Okay, so I'm not seeing anyone with appointments. So it looks like this is one of those subjects that we don't have any support with. So let's go back and see if we can find if there's another subject so I can show you guys an example. Maybe criminal justice. Let's see if anybody's available for that. Okay, so a couple of these subjects aren't available. So I just want you guys to know that this is, an option, but it's not a guarantee. And I think just kind of taking a look here and seeing, is there somebody available? And if there is someone to help you, that would be great, but it's not going to be for all subjects. The other part is, reach out to your instructor and talk to them if there's anything that you have questions about. If there's a tutoring resource, is there anything they suggest for tutoring? That can also be really helpful. And let's go back here. I wanted to show you guys one more thing. This is going to be a handout kind of summarizing what we talked about for the study skills, right? So how to study less and remember more. Just to kind of wrap up, do the retrieval practice, testing yourself, recalling what you can remember, doing practice tests, really checking for accuracy. How much do you remember that was right? And what do you maybe need to improve on? And down here, when to study, the using the space practice, spreading that out, little study bursts, even an hour a day, few days a week can make a huge difference. Do old material and new material. In order to be the most effective, combine both of these, testing yourself, quizzing yourself, making sure you're actively learning. Keeping that textbook open while you're zoned out on TV. You almost want to close the textbook and just let yourself have a moment to watch TV and then turn it off and then study. But trying to kind of halfway study is really, really not effective. And it's got to be emotionally draining. You're like, oh, I've been kind of studying for 6 hours. So these are some tips and tools. I hope this was helpful today. Let's just go back to the PowerPoint. And I think that was it for that. So, this is going to be available. The Psychology UC San Diego, they have like a great website talking about tutoring. Reach out to me if you want me to get you connected with that. But I hope this was helpful. And I hope this is going to be some tools that you guys can take, into the future that can help you basically have a better time taking your tests and preparing. So thanks for watching.